I wanted to introduce a colleague that I've had the opportunity to cross paths with a few times, particularly at the Crypto Commons Hub in Austria. Although I think this game has been played in a number of very interesting venues. But this is something that Rok has been working on for a couple of years. It's a game called Game Changers. And I find it really interesting because it's a nice synthesis of a lot of the work that's going on in, all of these, change-making groups, systems thinking groups. And it's a nice way to really kind of understand the context in which some of these tools, things like conviction voting or bonding curves or, quadratic voting, all of these kind of interesting, new governance primitives or funding primitives, and then applying them in a context of how they can solve real world challenges. So I won't go too much into the game itself because I think Rok has a great presentation, and depending on the time we have, maybe we can even get a couple of people on each team and maybe play around. I feel like this game is worth, the description alone, like it's a very rich game, very like a lot of interesting mechanisms and sort of different layers to it. So I figured it would be, of interest to the BlockScience team, and also maybe it would help bring some context to a lot of the various projects that are being worked on by different teams, and how they kind of come together in the shared context of planetary challenges that we face. So maybe I'll pass it off to Rok, and I believe he has a digital variation of the game that we can take a look at and perhaps even play around with. So without further ado, I'll let Rok take it away.
Yo, thanks so much, Jeff, and everyone joining today. Yeah, so I think I might just share the screen and just open my camera so you can see the face behind the voice. All right. So just for a quick taste on how it looks like. Oh, it's another Monopoly hack. How original, right? But yeah, no, there's layers to it. So let's get into it. Like what I wanted to have with this game is essentially some way that we could pitch all these new economy buzzwords and associated initiatives together, particularly those that we could kind of place within those kind of capture cooptation dynamics going on. And I wanted to make it explicitly about two teams that embody seemingly diametrically opposite discursive poles. So, for example, green growth versus degrowth, or capitalism versus communism, or a victorialist versus the hacker class, or the transhumanists versus the posthumanists, or whatever you can imagine. But obviously there's a lot of gray space in between those and the real world. But I think that actually by making characters out of those and creating that sort of explicit diametral opposite in this game dynamic, like that actually brings out that gray space, that muddly gray space. So yeah, essentially there's those two teams, and provisionally I'll be calling them like team status quo and team alternatives for now. But one of the things that we might want to do is define that polarity together today, and go through the steps in setting up the game, because in fact like the game essentially is just a bunch of squares and slots, and it's up to the players if they're willing. Of course, there's also a preset game, or like materials that you can plug into the game based on what you want to talk about, or what you're comfortable talking about as a player, and so on. But yeah, you go through these steps, and there's obviously a generative element to it, where each time this is played, there's an opportunity, but also outside of gameplay, of course, to kind of generate both, ideas for the teams, but also what the teams are essentially fighting for, which is these new economy spaces, essentially, or transition arenas, or you could call them different things, and they could be hexagons or whatever, like this is just one kind of example of how to set this up, but it's the design I've been going with for now. Obviously, I'm not also like a designer or even a hardcore gamer or board gamer or whatever, but this seemed to be like an interesting medium to go with for this. So yeah, basically as a team member or one of the two teams, you're essentially trying to capture these new economy spaces. So we have this kind of meta label, like this kind of buzzword narrative, whatever you would call it, level, where it has these buzzwords, right? Like sharing economy, circular, smart cities, regenerative economy, crypto, DLT. And obviously, again, this is very modular. We could co-define this. And then the idea is that each of these has a kind of initiative or further kind of down the line concept attached to it, or that we could, it's not an exact science and it's a game, right? We could stretch the boundaries a little bit, but the idea is to, kind of categorize it together. And it's also kind of part of a collective sense-making effort in some sense. And by going through these steps, you're also kind of, collective sense-making, if you will. And essentially how you do that, capture these areas or claim them in the first place, and so on. There's various dynamics involved, including co-optation and Trojan horses. And wild cards are actually another set of cards. But the main mechanic is storytelling, essentially. So basically you have these cards as a team status quo. You have a few challenge cards at a given time in your hand as a player. And on team alternatives, you have the same, but you have intervention cards. And each time you use one, you get to pick one from the deck, a new one. But essentially, this is a broad mix of various other challenges in, let's say, post-capitalist or however frame transformations. And on the other hand, various interventions that we might think of. And these also include, well, most of them, some QR codes to, the inspirations for them. And this again, like, lends itself to like both modularity and like the generativity, right? It's both players, audiences, while watching, like participating actually actively in the game, can also submit new cards, and also obviously outside of gameplay. And it's sort of meant as a springboard to kind of knowledge common all these things through this game and into this game. So I don't know, I don't know if you can see these examples or read them, but I'll just leave it here for a moment. So basically, as a capitalist, you have maybe three of these challenges, random challenges in your hand, and you land on a field. So the way you move through the board is like initially with 2 dice. You roll 2 dice and you choose the value that kind of suits you better. And if both are the same, then tough luck. But we could also, create a rule around that as well. So you move around the board like that, and you land on a particular field. And if you want to claim it, you essentially, as a capitalist or team status quo, have to match it with a challenge. And how you do that is you essentially have a minute to argue why that challenge is relevant in that space, kind of give it a bit more meat, a bit more context. And then that's kind of given up to a vote by the audience. So essentially they give it a score of 0 to 6. Yeah, we just go here. So this is like one example of the parameters that you could set for this kind of decision. And here I'm just using Mentimeter. Like one of the things you can do with this is, yeah, set different parameters, and people, yeah, on their phones or whatever, just following a link or a code, can submit their score, and that's kind of automatically aggregated through, yeah, everyone who's submitting this stuff in real time. And then, yeah, after a while, let's say everyone has half a minute to decide. We also obviously can co-define these parameters as well. So I like to keep this one relates to the prompt card, right? Because otherwise, yeah, you anything right goes, and the point of the game is to constrict it just enough that yeah, limits breed, yeah, creativity, new ideas, and so forth. So yeah, that's and for the interventions, essentially it's the same. Like if there's no challenge in place in a given field, like the team alternatives can essentially just claim it, or like put one foot in it, so to speak. And then if they come again, like on that field, and it hasn't been challenged, they can, you know, really claim it. Well, on the other hand, if they land on a space that already has a challenge, then they have to kind of play an intervention to try to capture that, or capture that back, or de-co-opt it, or trigger a so-called Trojan horse dynamic. Yeah,
I just wanted to say I really love that, the audience feedback part, because it really makes the audience part of the game, where the audience member is basically listening to the argument of either the capitalist or the commoner, and everyone weights or measures how effective their challenge or their intervention was, and then that is basically the role for initiative. So the audience feedback feeds back into the game, and if it was a very persuasive argument, there's more likelihood it will happen, or that they'll get points off of that. And if it's a less persuasive argument, it's more difficult for them to claim that space. So it's a really neat audience inclusion dynamic as well.
Yeah, exactly. And thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I sort of skipped over a little part there where, yeah, essentially that score, that average score of the audience for that particular argument, based on the prompt, is then mapped onto a dice roll. So it's 0 to 6 for a reason. Yeah, if you get a average score of 0, there's basically no chance, right, for it to succeed. You don't bother rolling a dice, like you suck, right? But on the other hand, like, yeah, if you get a 6, then it's also like 100%, right? You don't, you know, you're the boss. But if it's in between, and it's always kind of in between usually, right? Like that's mapped onto a dice roll. So if I get a 4 out of 6, then I have to roll 1 to 4. So if I roll 5 or 6, then I failed. And if I fail, that can backfire sometimes. And yeah, the kind of state rolls back even one more step in the other's favor. Let's go here to some interventions as well. Yeah, so essentially that's the thing. And well, there is a kind of what's it called, end state or winning state, but it's not the point per se. Of course, it's very much based on the process, and the point is the game itself. But like the idea is that the team alternatives have to capture at least like in whole, so two initiatives per narrative. Like they have to capture one narrative per player. So if it's 3 versus 3, they have to capture 3 whole of these areas, so 6 initiatives in total. Win them to their side and keep them. And when they do kind of let's say, unlock or fully capture one of these, like this specific field opens up, and they can sort of you have a bit more maneuvering space. But at the same time, like these fields, like it's a bit like still experimental, but like these fields correspond to these fields. So depending on what state is here, like if capitalism reigns supreme here, then this is essentially a landmine, you know, or like, sorry, which one is it here? Yeah, just not to confuse people. Yeah, yeah, you can move around here, and if capitalism, say, has this one captured, then this is locked. So this is an entry point, but this is locked. But if this is still like on equal grounds or something, you can still exit here, and that way you sort of, yeah, progressively as you unlock more fields, it in theory gets more easy. But also, like, one idea behind the game is that every kind of full circle that you make through the game represents 1 year in real world time. And the idea is that if the team alternatives doesn't kind of succeed in their mission by 2030, things are kind of too late anyways, and why bother, right? Just yeah, start preparing your bunkers or penis rockets to Mars or whatever, right? So yeah, lost my train of thought there. Someone just echo back to me what I was just saying. It's been a long day.
Yeah, I think you covered most of the basic dynamics. How do you manage this in a digital realm with team cards and dice rolling and all that? Just curious.
Yeah, so I've been using another platform, like I tested it once with another group from Future Law Institute based in London. And we sort of, yeah, it wasn't super streamlined, and I wouldn't like really bother with that one at this point. Well, like, and I've set up something here in Miro. And like I have these little blobs that can represent players. I have the cards here. That we could sort of group by people on the canvas, but yeah, I would, I mean, this is all kind of using a bunch of stuff like, right, roll dice, Mentimeter, like Excel tables, what have you. Like the idea is that this would be like a full-fledged digital game and a platform for it, right, and stuff. But yeah, making do with what I got. For now at least, and also like this is a passion project, and like you know, I've been working on this, yeah, since 2018 or so. But yeah, bit by bit, but the core concept has been there since more or less the beginning. Yeah, it's just been tough to, yeah, get it out there, although we've had, yeah, a bunch of playtests, something like 15 or so in-person playtests around Europe at various like conferences, yeah, related specifically, mostly around like, climate stuff. Because yeah, I think I kind of find that it really lends itself well to like be used by these, you know, various initiatives with various different foci on like in the new economy space, like, right, it's so diverse, but at the same time we kind of need to understand each other and have all these different things in mind at the same time, and the only way we can do it is by teaching each other, sort of, right? And this kind of game, I think, does that, and also engages audiences, or kind of yeah, literacy project in some sense, right? Because the idea is this would be basically a game show where you would kind of either solicit, or you would have a kind of nomination and voting system for players, right? So you kind of put the call out to different initiatives, and you know, people put up names of their people that would represent, you know, some, you know, platform co-op, this and that, or various initiatives that will kind of build the hype around it, right? People can vote. In the first 10 minutes, I was sort of setting this up as I just had the opportunity. Yeah, if we get to it, like we can also just simulate this quickly, and then you can, anyone can nominate anyone, and then put up their votes for this. But then also the audience, right? Sort of just by listening in and being able to vote, kind of interact, kind of understand, like it's really open to, like, maybe they don't understand something, but the more games they see, the more it sort of makes sense, right? And that's kind of the idea. So kind of anti-spectacle, cool. Game show, peer-to-peer, full on thing.
Yeah, I love how the game is so extensible as well. I know we've discussed a couple of sort of like extension packs, but I feel like we could do, one of the things we last discussed, Rok and I, was about different governance patterns, and that may perhaps the capitalists are have to use some sort of like board structure, versus the communists would perhaps use a DAO structure, or like wisdom of the crowd. Or I feel like there's so many different ways that this is extendable to incorporate some really interesting game dynamics. So I was really eager to share with, I know there's some game aficionados in this crew. So but I also feel like it's easiest to understand when you start to see the gameplay, even just a couple of rounds. So I'd be curious, are there any people here who would have the interest in joining either the status quo team or the alternatives team? And do we have any thoughts on, do we want to do capitalists versus commoners, or is there some other sort of dichotomy? Rok mentioned a few: degrowth versus green growth, or a few more specified contrasts. But is there any interest from the crew to define two teams, or join one of them? I'd love to see Josh as a capitalist.
Maybe there's some general comments or questions before moving to playing.
Sure.
Wait, what's going on? I heard I'd love to see Josh as a capitalist. I just got in here. What's going on?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know you joined late. So Rok has been introducing this game called Game Changers, and we're just looking for two team, or I guess it's 3 people per team. And I guess we should just go with capitalists versus commoners, because that's probably the how the board is currently set up, and also probably one of the more familiar dichotomies. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're just crowdsourcing a couple of players to play through a round or 2 of the game, and I'm happy to lead off just to model the round. But would be fun to get a few people playing and just get a feel for how the game dynamics work. All right, I don't know who, Orion, if you're around. I know you've played before. David or Chris or Jamshid, Barlin, anyone. I also know people are also super busy. So if you have other things going on while listening in, that's also cool. Rok, do you want to maybe drop some of these links, either the nomination link or the Miro link, in the chat, and we can get a few people in and dropping some either self-nominations or I still really want to see Josh playing capitalist.
I nominate Danilo as capitalist.
Wait, so why is the jail only for commoners? Because it says commoners jail? Why doesn't it just say jail?
That's how most jails work, isn't it? No, I'll let Rok explain.
Okay.
with regard to these fields, these are also modular in some sense, and some of these are borrowed from other games essentially. There's, yeah, essentially it's Jeff's sentiment. So like the game is essentially rigged towards the capitalists, towards the beginning, and also like aspects of it are, and that's maybe one aspect, at least in this kind of design, but it's also like these areas and what they do is also an open discussion in the game setup. There's of course also the option that we could do a collective setup exercise where we could think about the different narratives, buzzwords, signifiers, however you would frame it with regard to new economies, specifically those that, yeah, you find in your work resonate with your work, or specific initiatives that you would like to highlight through this game. This is kind of an opportunity to do so. The idea is, yeah, either do this beforehand with people, or just do everything in one go, or yeah, there's various options. But yeah, as said, the defining teams, defining areas in principle, only then do you select who will be on which team. And there's also, yeah, before that, kind of deciding like what kind of space or scale we would like to position this game in, as like this a global scale or a specific city or something. And yeah, basically you try to think, or we discuss briefly, like what do we think is kind of the current state of discourse, if you will, or who's kind of on the winning and losing side, or is it kind of on equal grounds? And that will kind of reflect on how many of these areas are already captured by capitalism before we even start the game. So like maybe 4 or even 8 of these individual initiatives will already like be, or capitalism will have one foothold in these areas already, forcing the alternatives to, yeah, already, if they want to claim that field, they already have to use an intervention to do so, rather than just claim it outright. So I guess it's maybe a decision, group decision, as to which thing we do. Is it the setup? And this is also a possibility, right? That we could use this opportunity here to do the setup. We could also just briefly simulate kind of the main game dynamics to bring in the story generating element and the voting element, and just go through, like, say, one line here of initiatives, which is what we did in another event, and it seemed to work pretty well. But we could also, yeah, as I said, take the time to do some of the setup, and also, like, now that you're familiar, I can send links, and we could do that asynchronously. And, you know, next time we have some time, we could dive into the game directly, and we have, you know, our custom board. We have, you know, already players who know their players, and maybe can even prepare a little extra, and even outside audiences or internal audiences could be invited to participate somewhat more passively as voters.
Yeah, if I can weigh in, I feel like what is already on the board is already like really interesting topics, and I feel like once you see and understand the game dynamics a bit more, it might get some of those wheels turning as to other ideas that could be fit into this game framework. So maybe we either emulate the gameplay or do a round, and then that might get the wheels turning as to, like, how other things can fit into this sort of debate or discourse game dynamic.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And yeah, also the initiatives are meant to be, I mean, most if not all of them you will be familiar with this, yeah, already.
Cool. So do we have 2 or 3 people per side? I'm happy to jump in. I see Orion is down to join a team.
And test it out with 2 on each side. I would, yeah, propose.
Sure. I'm happy to go on Team Commoner to start balancing it out here. Anybody else? Oh, Orion said he would be down. Do you want to put him on Team Commoner as well? And anyone else itching to experience the game dynamic? Or also remember there's audience participation too. So you can always vote in the social sensor fusion dynamic average consensus mechanism.
Somewhere in the background, I'll try to set up the link. And also, yeah, given us, we would just simulate it maybe at this point. I would just, yeah, point out that we're now skipping the kind of part where we attach already before we start playing some challenges, and I'll just sort of semi-arbitrarily decide which one to put where, and I'll put maybe 2. These marks are essentially there to mark the state of the field. Universal basic services. Okay, so putting capture of innovation space by design elites under blockchain. And
So what's with the team labels? Why are there labels for the teams?
Labels for the teams.
Like
sorry, Rok, you keep setting up the board. I'll take a crack at explaining. So the idea is there's the status quo team versus the alternatives team. So that could be like capitalism is the status quo. They've got, and this is why he's placing the challenges around the board now, is that the game is initially tipped in favor of the status quo. So what Rok is doing now is setting capitalist challenges on these specific technologies. So the challenge under community currencies is marginalized and local initiatives are having a hard time connecting to broader change movements. So this is sort of a challenge that capitalism is placing on the technology or the movement of community currencies. So if a commoner lands there, they have intervention cards. So one of those intervention cards, for example, might be the Credit Commons mutual credit paradigm. So when the commoner lands on that, they essentially have to use one of their intervention cards, which could be any number of tools, technologies, art, storytelling, etc., about some sort of alternative to the status quo, and we have to use the interventions that we have to overcome the challenges that are posed by the status quo, sort of thing. So there's the 2 teams are I guess two forms of anything. So capitalism versus communism, or degrowth versus green growth, or however you want to set it up. And it's basically a game to explore discourse in the challenges that face us in a number of areas with the interventions that we have to address those challenges. So it's kind of taking a game format to discuss and debate the challenges that we face on any number of issues and the tools that we have to address those challenges in context. Does that make a bit more sense?
Yeah. So one chooses their interventions.
So the interventions are cards in your hand, and you have to choose the one that matches, or you have to make it match through your discourse and debate, which is then judged by the audience, and you're given a score, and then you roll your dice to see if your intervention succeeded, or your challenge if you're on the capitalist side, or your intervention if you're on the commoner side.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, here I set up the players. I put up 2 challenges already. So this is, before the game even starts. So here we don't go through the voting process, or rather like it's different. Like we would like go through rounds, everyone would have a challenge and everyone would get a chance to match, or at least a few people get to match and argue a little bit just to warm up kind of what the game will be about later on. And here I basically, I'll just put up names here, and let's say these are your provisional decks for now. And I'll just zoom in on them when, you guys are the players, and I think we can make that work. The capitalists sit this one out since they have sort of foothold enough already. So the idea is that commoners start, but this is of course open for debate as well. But maybe Jeff, can start. And I guess I'll just roll the dice for you here.
Thank you.
Bloop. Oh, okay. So you got
6 it is.
Lucky. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're landing on blockchain.
Perfect. All right. So what is the challenge that's on blockchain right now?
The challenge is capture of innovation space by design elites.
With stakes and interests vested in the status quo. Cool. Are we on a call with some of those design elites right now?
And just to explain a little bit, so actually in this kind of general version of the game that we play these days, it's actually both of the players and the team that can propose a challenge, an intervention. Even though Jeff landed here, like maybe a wild card actually might make that impossible later on, like something will happen and you can't effectively collaborate anymore. So like if you land on there, it's just up to you. Right now, like either of you could volunteer. And in the kind of real world setup where you would have the cards, you wouldn't show them to the other players. And you can't really say what the content of your card is. So like if one player is like, shit, I don't have anything, or I can't think of any story that I could connect this intervention with that challenge in that space. But then maybe, the other one says, I've got maybe an okay one. And then, that's how you decide in your team, like who will pitch the story or which prompt card will be in play. And then, the person who has that card kind of starts, and there's a timer that runs for 1 minute. And you essentially build out the story, make it as convincing as you can make it. And there's various narrative strategies that, I invite you to discover for your own, right? What convinces the audience if you're a commoner, right? Is it like just a very compelling vision of an alternative world or a transformation? Or is it like something very more specific or situated or even personal? Like, many strategies, narrative strategies can be deployed here, and probably we haven't really even investigated all of them through all the playtests now. So it's really up to people's imagination. The prompt cards are there, you have to stick with them, but anything else goes, right?
Okay, I think I'm ready. I think the first card on the left, I'll take. Can you move it up towards the challenge just so I can read the challenge again, and I'll debate or propose an intervention for the challenge here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the blockchain technology has been captured. The innovation space has been taken up by design elites with stakes and interests vested in status quo. So in the future, Bitcoin is held by a handful of whales. Ethereum is run primarily by BlackRock and JP Morgan. All the VCs swept in during the bear market of 2022 and picked up all the bags of all of these crypto projects, and they are basically threatening to turn them into finance 2.0 and hypercapitalism on steroids. And this technology is in severe danger. So the intervention that is being proposed, would you mind going back to that so I can read it again, Rok? Sorry, when you're logged in. Sure. So the intervention proposed is a collaboration fostering synergies between grassroots initiatives and local authorities, because ultimately the promise of this technology is not in, massive top-down control of monolithic protocols, but it is in the flourishing of local community currencies that are purpose-driven. They align the incentives of community members to act in the best interest of their community, addressing ecological crises and environmental barriers while delivering local subsistence currencies that are supported by regenerative agriculture and community support services for those who need it most. So that is the intervention proposed by this commoner for the challenge towards blockchain technology. And now we vote. It's okay, Chester. It's okay, Chester. My dog is pretty nervous that this challenge to the blockchain technology is yes, it's okay. All right, so now we get to vote. Wait, can I vote too?
Yeah, usually
anybody know?
Yeah, not the players.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyone can have a go just to see. And usually I wouldn't display the results as they're coming in like this, because it just might skew the kind of people's votes that haven't decided yet. Here, oh yeah, actually, if I do this, it's looking pretty good. We'll give it another 10 seconds for a vote. Okay, so it seems that's it, 4.4. It's unfortunate. If it was 4.5, we would sort of, round it up, but it's a 4 out of 6. It's pretty typical. Ooh, 4, okay.
Tough crowd. Tough crowd.
Okay, so we retract 1 dice. How do we do that again? This. Ah, it's a 3.
I don't trust this dice algorithm.
So the intervention succeeded. Yeah, there's another node that's added to the story that's forming here. Jeff is here, and a little token comes here to represent that the commoners have kind of laid the groundwork in this space. So now it's, yeah, I don't know, we decide, but maybe we can give capitalists a go.
Yeah, Danilo or Josh.
Yeah, it can go.
Okay. Just roll. Oop. Okay, 2 or 5. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's, you can, as a capitalist, claim universal basic something. There's an income, services, assets, equity, you name it, or reputation systems. And as you do so, you have to match it with a challenge and argue why it's relevant there.
Can we zoom in on his cards so he can see what the
Yes.
challenges he has available?
So just to be clear, it's going to fall on reputation systems or computation.
You can choose which one you go to, or you can consult with your team. But like, for example, if you go to universal basic something, then it means like you'll sort of, yeah, have a foothold in both in one space. So you're basically guaranteeing, but at the same time, yeah, you may want to make sure that they don't like advance here. And then if there's no contestation here, they can just swoop in and they claim this whole space.
So
Maybe
I can choose which one if I want.
From that perspective, it might make sense to do reputation systems.
Yeah. Any prior thoughts, Josh?
And the challenges, and it's the same here, like either of you can actually pose a challenge, although usually it's, yeah, a bit easier to argue as the challenges are kind of broad enough, but sometimes, yeah.
So given that we do not have a challenge card, I would propose a challenge, how that challenge would be important to that topic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so no intervention.
No, that's for the commoners later. Yeah, you're basically setting up the challenge that if commoners land on, we'll have to respond to with an intervention. So you can also look at it from that angle. You may want to set up the story in a way that it's kind of maybe even complex to enter with an intervention because of the way you set up, like the things you added beyond the prompt itself. And that could be also recorded, like you could write down, or we would have someone who would, keep score and write this stuff and add it onto the card.
So I would argue that I would pick reputation systems, and I would argue that the challenge is institutional fragmentation, which is the lower right card.
Yeah, we can also pick from Josh's.
Yeah.
This one makes sense. Yeah. And also you would have essentially a minute to make as strong an argument as you can as to why this challenge is relevant here.
Yes.
So the prompt is now the field is this, and yeah, it's up to your.
So do you want to give it? Yeah, okay.
But no, what you were going to say, Jeff?
I was just going to say, if you have a 30-second debate or discourse on how this challenge applies to the topic area, and then we can vote on how effective your challenge is.
Yeah, I can do that 30 seconds. So let me know when to start. But I would prefer to be looking at the cards while I do.
Yeah, of course. I'm just trying to set up so that people can
Yeah.
vote after it. It's,
Okay, I will
don't
do
have two screens.
I will provide a 30-second argument. So we do have a great issue, which is associated with crypto and reputation systems, which is really about there is no standardization about what is identity in crypto. And also, this is not a new problem. This is actually an old problem also outside of crypto, because, I mean, when you talk about identity, documentation, how you make a proof of address, proof of identity, you do have a lot of fragmentation that was solved on the old world through essentially centralization, through coercive mechanisms. So given that, it's a big challenge to crypto, given that we cannot coerce people, we cannot have centralization, and all these fragmented DAOs and the apps, how we can make a reputation systems. Because when you talk about reputation, you are talking about people, you are talking about how work the things they do. So yeah, I would say that it's one of the, and actually, Vitalik Buterin did this post actually 2 or 3 weeks ago that pseudo resistance is going to be one of the main challenges over the next 2 to 3 years. So yeah, that's my case.
Is it the same link to vote as last time, Rok? Oh yeah, okay, it's been reset. Great. Big challenge. I like this tool as well. Is this a metagame tool or is that just the background that you put on the... Oh, you're muted, Rok.
Sorry, yeah, for the meta game when we played it, like I had this one on, I just haven't changed anything. Yeah, cool. So I will just reset this and it should already roll. And it's a 4. So congratulations, Team Capitalism. All right. So now it's Orion's turn. Is Ryan here? Sorry, I've got a bunch of stuff happening on my screen.
Yep.
Okay. A 1 and a 6.
Okay.
So that's nice. So
okay, so the
you
wild
can go
card is 1, right?
You can go for the wild card, or you could, yeah, land here and pose another intervention and basically
All right.
lock the blockchain.
I know it's going to be the wild card. It has to be the wild card.
It's always the wild card.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have like a randomizer thing here, but maybe
You could
without like
roll a
really
dice, maybe.
seeing it, you could pick one of the first 7 and then I'll zoom in. So 1 to 7, pick one.
1 to 7, 6. What's 6?
Okay, 6. Reduced working time. So you're on Team Commons, so this one applies. People have more time to go create new economies. So if
Sweet.
capitalism got this one, like, this would have happened. So this means, at every start of New Year, so each complete circle you make, like you advance your position in one area of your choosing. So it will take a while, it will take a year, but it's guaranteed. And this is a hold card, so you, yeah, just hold it and until you make a full circle.
Sweet. Okay. Yeah, that's good because I wasn't quite sure how the wildcards like actually worked. So yeah, this is helpful.
Yeah, and it's like it's just a basic set that I sort of made up on my own based on research, interviews, or like imagination. But like, and it tries to fit somewhat like mechanics to like the actual content of it. And there's I've found endless possibilities here because there's so many little things that you can tweak in the game, and there's unlimited things that you can come up in terms of story. It's pretty fun also to come up with these things.
Yeah, so out of all the ones I've seen, I've really enjoyed like all of the challenges, interventions, wildcards. Like they're all like really compelling to me. Yeah.
Thanks. So it's Josh's turn.
What have you gotten me into? Oh my God.
A 5 and a 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's either blockchain or reputation systems.
So how does it work? He has to overthrow the intervention, or is it just posing a new challenge on either one of those?
Yeah, here it's like if you put another intervention here and like connect it with what has been said before, and it's compelling enough, and a little bit of like luck is involved, unless you get a 6, right? But if you like do another intervention here, you basically lock out the space from capitalism. Like basically, even if capitalism lands here, they can't do anything, or maybe they even risk something, right?
Josh is on team capitalism, so he's coming in with another challenge.
Shit, sorry, so then if you land here, then you can try to undo that intervention. So there's basically a maximum number of 4 nodes, let's say, so 4 cards for a particular playing field, and that can involve another challenge and then another intervention, or just another intervention from the commoner side if they want to fully claim the space. So basically, if you land here, though, you don't have to put up another challenge. You basically just automatically gain another, like, or like your foothold is even stronger. So how do we do that again? All right, we put up this here.
So Josh, what do you feel? Do you want to lock down reputation systems, or do you want to apply one of your challenges to overthrow my intervention on blockchain technology? You have a choice.
I'll go with reputation systems.
Okay, so the easy way out, huh?
Okay.
I'm slightly joking, but if commoners land on this field once more, they can lock this out from you. Whereas here, indeed, you don't have to do anything, but you also gain a foothold here. So in some sense, because commoners have to get both fields, essentially, as a capitalist, it's enough if you just shoot them in one knee, right? Not in both knees. So that's certainly, a legit strategy there. Okay, so it's Jeff's turn again. 5 and a 1. And assembly, yeah, shit, what does that do? Don't ask me.
Was that one of the setup from the last game?
That one's from Commonsopoly, and I have no idea what it does, but I just had I had one that was XYZ as well, like for to put in stuff, but in here it's like a commoner side thing, but we could decide that it does something in your benefit or whatnot. Yeah.
And intervention is I pick another intervention card? Or do you pick more cards up after you use them?
Actually, yeah, when you use a card, yeah, you get automatically a new card, but if you land on an intervention area, that actually allows you to play an intervention in any so there's so it's not the same design, but I had in one like an intervention here and here. So basically, if you land on one half of the field of the whole full board is available to you. But maybe let's say that landing on this intervention area at this time allows you to apply an intervention in this segment here. Yeah.
Can I apply an intervention before there's a challenge?
Yeah, no, I guess in this kind of setup, no. So yeah, that doesn't really make sense.
So should I play an intervention on one of the challenges that are there, maybe on community currencies?
Yeah, let's say that, yeah, let's say the half of the board as was in the other version. Then yeah, then everything makes sense. Yeah, cool.
Cool. Okay. Would you mind grabbing me one more intervention card at random from the deck?
Course. Wait, it may not be so random. Unless it's already there, and there's a favorite, but it's already there, I think. It's the meta card. It's the game design initiative.
Oh yeah, nice. Okay. Yeah, that's easier.
Put these here.
Okay, so the technologies, community currencies, the challenges, marginalized local initiatives are having a hard time connecting to broader change movements. Sounds about right. Okay, so the interventions that I have available. Okay, cool. And can I also potentially use Orion's cards? I'm just curious to see what he's got. Citizen Science Project, an open letter, or a cool post-capitalist fiction novel. Okay.
I guess it's either reputation systems or community currencies.
Oh yeah, right. I have an option there.
Or blockchain. Yeah.
So how does that work with reputation systems? They already have it locked down. So if I introduce an intervention on their challenge, do I sort of like release their foothold there, or is it still locked down for the capitalists?
You trace it back by one step in that case. But also if you don't succeed, then it will backfire, maybe even in the other blockchain space.
Oh.
I don't know, I'm making it up as I go. Sometimes. but that's the charm.
Cool. Okay. All right, well, I think I'm gonna go for community currencies. You know, and I'm gonna go for the game design here to try to bring this full circle. Okay.
Nice.
So yeah, you can move those away. Thank you. So here comes my argument. Community currencies are a very powerful technology for local emancipation and participatory decision-making, but marginalized local initiatives have a hard time connecting to broader change movements. So a lot of community currencies feel very isolated, very limited in scope, which is a challenge for them to make change on the scale that is necessary. So the intervention proposed is radical new game design called Game Changers, which promotes critical public engagement with diverse alternative economies, and it gives a very tangible and low cost way for communities and cities and bioregions to understand their local productive power and the incentives that are possible, the win-win-win scenarios when local economies are brought back into balance with the people through participatory budgeting and regenerative agriculture and local sustainability movements. So it's a way to spread the good news about this new technology at low stakes in a way that people can understand through game design, like this very game we're playing right now. So that is my intervention for the challenge on community currencies.
Awesome. Thanks. And yeah, this is open as well. It's the same link. Just keep it open until someone votes so we see. Oh yeah, great. Okay, so it's a 5 out of 6. Nice. Oh. And it's a 3, so the intervention succeeded.
We did it.
Nice. Jeff is actually here, but somehow telepathically, yeah, did all that. Nice work, Jeff. Okay, so yeah, and nice one also, and as you said, like full circle. Also, it's kind of yeah, nearing that time. So maybe we can just take a few minutes. People can just if you have any thoughts on it, any questions. Otherwise, we can keep in touch about it. And as said, there's ways to asynchronously set up the board or customize it to fit more what you guys are working on directly or what you want to discuss, right? Or if you're comfortable discussing. And yeah, optionally invite audiences or just other people participate as judges or peer participants, as I like to call them in this game.
Can you zoom out? Can you zoom in a little bit? I just want to see all the sections.
Right.
And
this is just another way to kind of mark the state of the fields, like when capitalism has an upper hand in some field. This is making Porky scared, and obviously the others, Porky is pretty satisfied with himself.
And each of these can be customized as well, Josh. So this was some of the brainstorming that Rok has done with previous groups, but these are also, I mean, you can customize the board to be on topics of interest depending on, you know, the group that's playing, or the teams that are, you know, if it's green growth versus degrowth, there may be different like topical issues to discuss and debate, versus like a capitalist communist divide. So yeah, interesting to hear any thoughts or feedback, and also, you know, any ideas for any of these not games, you know, topics or interventions or challenges. I feel like there's some really interesting research going on in the BlockScience space that may you know, be good input to a game like this. So I'm curious, now that we've seen a couple of rounds play out, if there's any other thoughts or questions or comments as well.
Yeah, one comment that I do have is that I did have a bit of a challenge when voting. Maybe I'm overthinking, but because we do have three measures for computing the average vote. And for example, the first one, if it's related to the prompt card. The thing is, each of the three, they do have a different attractor, because the prompt card, either is or is not. So it's very sensitive in the sense that the spread is going to be huge. It's very easy for you to put 1, and it's very easy for you to put 5 or 6. And the first one, which was about plausibility, is a bit less sensitivity, but is still sensitivity. But the biggest challenge for me was the second one, which is about inventiveness, because it's sort of unbounded. So, I mean, what is a 6? What is a 1? So what happens is that I think, let me search over the space of all possible arguments, and 3 is going to be the medium. So what's going to happen is that the spread is going to be very thin, because it's relatively insensitive, because the argument needs to be very good, extremely good in order to have a 5 or 6, and extremely bad in order to have a 1 and 2. So most of them end up with 3 or 4, because I mean, that's the standard deviation. So yeah, just a thought. And I think that this may be important for gaming, because, I mean, I didn't notice that almost all average scores were like 4.5, 4.7. So how we could increase the spread of that?
Yeah, really great comments, and thanks. And this is, yeah, as said, we could define these parameters together. And part of the thinking behind this one was like plausibility is this kind of, really classical, even epistemologically problematic category. While the inventive, imaginative is supposed to be a sort of counterweight to that, and then relates to the prompt card, is just kind of as I explained before. Like one thing, as you explained, like this dynamic, it's true. I think it's a reason why I say a 4 out of 6 as an example when I explain the game, because it's almost always a 4 out of 6. But like it also, in some sense, it levels the playing field in terms of the skills of the players themselves as kind of storytellers in some way. So like, you know, you see someone's trying, you're not going to give them the highest score, but you're also not going to give them a 0 probably, and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of like social dynamics that come into play as well, also depending on if this is like an anonymous audience versus like friends and so on. Like part of the mechanics is also about kind of leveling the playing field, and people, you know, also the thing about where if you don't have a card or you don't feel comfortable, like, you know, you can delegate it to the other player to do that and so forth. There's a lot of spaces where people of all sorts of narrative skills, you could say, like, can participate and kind of even hone those skills as they play. Yeah.
Cool. Any other thoughts? I see we're 2 minutes to the hour. So yeah, maybe one more question or thought before we close, if there are any.
Where do the cards come from? The challenge or the intervention cards in and the other ones? I mean, are they the producer of the game produces them, the players bring them along? How's that supposed to work?
Yeah, so there's this kind of basic version where there's just these cards that I've developed based on, readings, research, interviews and stuff. But the idea is that both, like, while the audience listens in to the game, and of course the idea is that every game is kind of unique, like with the setup and everything, and also the audience kind of corresponds a bit to that setup, usually. So the idea is that it's up to the audience to also then generate additional challenges or interventions that maybe even more resonate to the playing fields, the specific playing fields that the players chose to play with that round. So like while the game is being played, like new cards can be generated and kind of slide it into the deck, and can enter the game already, in that playthrough. But also, like, outside of this, right, for now it's like an Excel spreadsheet, right, but like I would have an online platform where people would submit ideas in an active kind of moderation community that sifts through those and converts them into playable cards that might even have some mechanics attached to them and so forth, at least when it comes to the wild cards, and kind of map all the possibilities there as well as this is developing. Yeah.
So a metagame, and the card creation is a metagame, sort of driven by the audience.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, that's a cool thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting dynamics that I feel once you've seen the game, or experienced the gameplay once, there's a lot that can be added on. I've suggested to Rok, a couple of like expansion packs almost. Once you get people familiar with the game, I feel like there's a lot of interesting customizability that we can layer in. And yeah, anyway, it's a really fun game. So I wanted to introduce it to the crew here. And also I'm excited about the digital version because, even in physical version, especially with large audiences, we usually get through a round or two in a session, but I'd love to have a digital board that we could come back to with a couple of groups and really I feel like it's a great opportunity to trial these ideas, trial by fire almost, or test them against each other. And yeah, I'm really interested, especially even like you said, Rok, you could have groups of people nominating their most vocal proponents, and I'd love to see Scott Santon's giving UBI arguments versus like Santi Siri talking about Sybil resistance, or I just feel like there's so many interesting thought leaders that could engage in this game, and it's really a way to kind of get to the cut to the chase in the debate, and you're really weighing the merits of these challenges versus the tools that can address them, and of course in a context that's important to the audience too. So yeah, thanks so much for coming in today, Rok.